one bites the dust. Country number 4, Spain, gets bailed out, and we all, of course, know that it won't be the last. Though I wondered over the weekend whether perhaps I was missing something, because when the Spanish Prime Minister, Mr. Rajoy, got up, he said that this bailout shows what a success the Eurozone has been. And I thought, well, having listened to him over the previous couple of weeks telling us there wouldn't be a bailout, I've got the feeling after all his twists and turns, he's just about the most incompetent leader in the whole of Europe. And that's saying something, because there's pretty stiff competition. Indeed, every single prediction of yours, Mr. Barroso, has been wrong. And dear old Herman Van Rompuy, well, he's done a runner, hasn't he? Because the last time he was here, he told us we'd turned the corner, that the euro crisis was over, and he hasn't bothered to come back and see us. You know, I remember being here 10 years ago and hearing the launch of the Lisbon Agenda. We were told that with the euro by 2010 we would have full employment, and indeed that Europe would be the competitive and dynamic powerhouse of the world. By any objective criteria, the euro has failed, and in fact there is a looming impending disaster. You know, this deal makes things worse, not better. 100 billion is put up for the Spanish banking system, and 20% of that money has to come from Italy. And under the deal, the Italians have to lend to the Spanish banks at 3%, but to get that money, they have to borrow on the markets at 7%. It's genius, isn't it? It really is brilliant. So what we're doing with this package is we're actually driving countries like Italy towards needing to be bailed out themselves. In addition to that, we put a further 10% on Spanish national debt. And I tell you, any banking analyst will tell you 100 billion doesn't solve the Spanish problem. It would need to be more like 400 billion. And with Greece teetering on the edge of euro withdrawal, the real elephant in the room is that once Greece leaves, the ECB, the European Central Bank, is bust. It's gone. It has 444 billion euros worth of exposure to the bailed out countries. And to rectify that, you'll need to have a cash call from Ireland, Spain, Portugal, Greece and Italy. You couldn't make it up, could you?
What do you think of this claim that it's the fault of the United States, the problems that Europe has?
Well, remember, this bloke's an idiot. I mean, a real, complete idiot. And I forgot to tell you, he's also a communist. Because when he was a student,
it's a twofer.
He was actually a supporter. No, I'm not joking. He was a supporter of Chairman Mao, which is just about the most extreme form of communism that exists. So the guy is a deluded idiot. I do my best in the European Parliament to try and point this out to the world. But the reason the euro is in the state it's in is they've put together a completely artificial currency with countries that never fitted together. They've added on top of that a regulatory cost burden through excess regulation on the environment and employment legislation that is...
We have all of these billions and billions of euros, hundreds of billions of euros going into these bailouts. Where is all that money going?
It kind of goes straight through the governments and straight back to the banks from the member states who've given the money in the first place. And it's very odd. I mean, in the case of Spain, the only buyers of Spanish bonds are Spanish banks. Listen, the whole thing's a giant Ponzi scheme, isn't it? It's the same money that's circulating round and round and round. And at the end of the day, this whole thing is going bust.
Well, it's a Ponzi scheme, but instead of private investors being the victims, it's taxpayers, because taxpayers are footing the bill for these bailouts.
Yes, it is, and that's why we're seeing the beginnings of a real democratic revolution taking place across the north of Europe. Just 18 months ago in Finland, a very conservative country in every way, a very new political party headed up by a friend of mine nearly won the general election. We're seeing in the Netherlands, with elections coming up in September, over 50% of the parties there in the polls actually want to get out of the European Union, not just the Eurozone. In this country, we've seen my party, UKIP, overtake the Lib Dems in the polls and now posing a real challenge intellectually and in terms of votes as well to the Conservative government. There is big, big change taking place in Europe, and that is because we have been led effectively by a group of ex-communists to a total disaster.
We have a
Nigel, what surprised you about the last 12 months?
What surprises me is that 5 countries have now been bailed out within the Eurozone. The 6th is just round the corner. Public opinion, north, south, east and west of Europe is changing rapidly against this centralised model. And what surprises me is that so few people inside these institutions are even prepared to contemplate there might be something wrong with the Euro projects. And I feel now, when I come to this building, I'm sort of surrounded by Scientologists. I'm surrounded by some weird cult who, even as disaster engulfs everything, continue to believe. I'm amazed more of them haven't woken up.